Welcome back, YouTubers. This is Omar from Near Mint Condition, and welcome to part 2 of 3 of the comprehensive X-Men reading order in oversized format and in Omnibus edition. So if you haven't seen part 1, maybe you should go back and watch that. If you have, then you know what this is about, so please stay tuned.
Go Club.
This second part will focus on stories that were originally printed from 1992 all the way to 2001. I'm gonna kick it off with X-Man, the X-Cutioner song. This is back when the books were printed really nice. This is not an omnibus, it is just a Marvel hardcover. I like to begin this series with this because this is kind of the post-Image books days, when all the Image guys left. I think when in my last video, that's where I left off, when Jim Lee, Los Portacio, Mark Silvestri, Rob Liefeld, all those guys left the X books, leaving the new guys to come in and take over. This crossover was originally supposed to be called Sins of the Father, but they decided to change it a little bit. And actually, Fabian Nicieza is the guy that kind of helmed this storyline together. And working with what he had left over, I have to say, it's pretty amazing. It's a pretty good storyline. It's kind of complicated as hell, but with what he had to work with, I'm pretty impressed. So this collects Uncanny X-Men 294 to 297, X-Factor 84 through 86, X-Men Adjectiveless 14 through 16, and X-Force 16 through 18. It also collects the Strife Strike Files, which is just a one-shot where some of the characters from Age of Apocalypse are introduced. Interesting enough. Jesus, I remember this panel. I was kind of an idiot kid, and I was like, I don't understand. Why is this flower talking to the X-Men? And it's Jay Lee, by the way. This is on art, and it's Wolverine. Obviously, it's Wolverine, right? Not a flower. I was a moron. I think it took me like the third read-through to realize it was Wolverine. So this introduces Greg Capullo. The amazing Greg Capullo took over X-Force. Then Andy Kubert took over X-Men. Brandon Peterson, who I was never really a huge fan of, this guy right here, I always thought was a poor man's Jim Lee, took over the Uncanny X-Men book. And actually, this is one of the most popular books during that era. This is the Song's End, which is the epilogue of the X-Cutioner song, where Professor Xavier gets the use of his legs back for an issue. So yes, I might be talking about some spoilers. Nothing really too big if you've never read this stuff. But, you know, being that these stories are about 20-something years old, I think the statute of limitations has been lifted on them. And then we have Fatal Attractions. Now, I will say that in between X-Cutioner song and this book, they did leave something out. And that is the Shatter Shot crossover. That was happening during the annuals. I'll go ahead and show you what this book looks like on the inside. And so those issues have been orphaned. They are Uncanny X-Men Annual number 16, the first X-Men Adjectiveless Annual. Hey, signed by Larry Hama. Forgot about that. Great guy. X-Factor Annual 7 and X-Force Annual 1. It's the Mojoverse, and it's a crossover that introduces us to some of Shatterstar and Longshot's people. And that's pretty much about it. And hopefully, because I know it's going to happen, when they re-release the X-Cutioner song as part of the Omnibus editions, and they re-release it as an Omnibus, I hope that they include those issues in there. But who knows? Marvel. So yes, this is the big crossover. Again, it seems like X-Cutioner song started a trend of summer crossovers. I know that the first one was probably Mutant Massacre, but by the time we got to X-Cutioner song, it was every 6 months we had to have a crossover. So this is Fatal Attractions. It is the return of Magneto. We hadn't seen him since X-Men 3 when Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, or actually Chris Claremont's final issue. So this collects Uncanny X-Men 298 through 305 and then 315. Yes, I know, weird, but believe me, they're all collected, just in a weird way. So then 315 and then Annual 17, which is the first appearance of the X-Cutioner. Not to be confused with the X-Cutioner song. Everything was X during this time. Everything was so extreme. And then X-Factor 87 through 92, X-Men Unlimited 1 and 2, X-Force 25, and X-Men 25, which is the classic issue where Wolverine gets his adamantium ripped out of his body by Magneto. And Wolverine 75, one of the biggest tear-jerking issues to me. And Excalibur 71. So that includes the entire crossover. Again, I'm not going to be talking about X-Factor, X-Force that much unless they are included in these hardcovers. If you want to see a comprehensive reading order of X-Factor and X-Force, there isn't that much to X-Factor or other X books, let me know in the comments down below. I thought this crossover was pretty well done. The return of Magneto, the betrayal of one of the X-Men, death, but I mean, who really stays dead in X-Men? And kind of an aftermath of the issues of what happens here. Good Lord, I remember X-Men Unlimited 2. That took me forever to read. I don't know what Fabian Nicieza was trying to win, but man, that story was so long-winded. Yes, this is the issue I was talking about where Magneto rips the adamantium out of Wolverine. It was one of those issues as a kid, you were like, how has he not done this before in the past? But he did it. And I remember these covers. Joe Madureira did that cover, and Ken Lashley did the inside. So that is Fatal Attractions, which reprints some of the stories from X-Men Classics in Magneto Zero. Yes, this only collects 10 years of X-Men, and that's still a lot of stuff. We've gotten a lot of stuff collected from this era, but there's still so much more. I have talked about this in depth, the Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix, in a previous episode, so if you want to check that out, click on the links that I'll be showing some cards up top if you want to see those. So really quick, this collects X-Men 26 through 35. Also, the crossover Blood Ties with the Avengers. Avengers 368 through 369. Avengers West Coast 101. Uncanny X-Men 307 to 310. And Cable 6 through 8. X-Men Unlimited 3. Uncanny X-Men Annual 18. The Wedding Album. The What If issue number 16. And The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix 1 through 4. And then some material from the Marvel Valentine issue. So if you want to see more of an in-depth look to that, there is a video I did for this, so more than welcome to check that out. Next up is Fae Covenant, a crossover that was set up many years long before this, and kind of tied up loose ends all the way back from X-Factor when Louise Simonson was writing the book. So this collects Uncanny X-Men 306, and then jumps all the way to 311 to 314, because remember, 307 through 310 were collected in the Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix. I know it is confusing as shit, but believe me, it's all here. Yes, so 311 to 314, skipping issue 315, and going to 316 through 317, because 315 was collected in Fatal Attractions, if you've been paying attention. I know, it's so stupid, but hey, whatever. At least we're getting it all. Also collects Excalibur 78 through 82, X-Men 36 through 37, X-Factor 106, X-Force 38, and Wolverine 85, and Cable 16. So, the return of the Phalanx, these are Warlock's people, Self-Friend, that guy from New Mutants, and introduces us to new characters. A new batch of heroes, Generation X, which blew up, those guys blew up huge in the 90s. So much so that they had their own made-for-TV movie that was not even worth talking about. So by now we got art from Andy Kubert, Tony Daniels, Ken Lashley, some more Greg Capullo, actually the last part of Greg Capullo's arc, and then Adam Kubert, who was phenomenal on Wolverine. And I think Steve Skroce on Cable. Yeah, Steve Skroce on Cable for sure. Yeah, this guy. Went on to do the storyboards for The Matrix, and every once in a while comes back to do a comic book. I think the last one I read by him was We Stand on Guard with Brian K. Vaughan. I also love the little extras that they put in the back. So, Legionquest. I did a video on this, so go ahead and watch that if you want to. This collects Uncanny X-Men 318 to 321, X-Men 38 through 41, X-Men Unlimited 4 through 7, X-Men Adjectiveless, Annual number 3, X-Factor 107 to 109, and Cable number 20. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of missing stories here, believe it or not. We still have the Magneto War, the hunt for Xavier, the aftermath of Operation Zero Tolerance, and Apocalypse, the 12, which is a huge storyline that started with the Shattering and ended with the search of Cyclops. So we have enough material to make about 3 or 4 more Omnis. And I'm not giving Marvel any ideas, but it's true, we do. And then suckers like me will end up buying it. And we also have Eve of Destruction Omnibus that was announced. And that one comes out in July of 2018. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we're looking at the Revolution Omnibus. And yeah. yeah, if you want to see the rest of this, check out that video. But to me, I think the next one that should be coming out in omnibus format from this era, right after Eve of Destruction, that was recently solicited, logically it has to be X-Men the 12, or Apocalypse the 12. Speaking of Apocalypse, because it's one that's been out of print for a while, and in trade paperback format, and it's a good storyline. It's Alan Davis. So, Age of Apocalypse, probably one of the last great crossover issues, and it does overlap a little bit with what was collected previously in Legionquest, but that's okay. Double dipping is a thing you do with some of these hardcovers sometimes. So this collects the prequel, which is Uncanny XMen 320 to 321, X-Men 40 to 41, Cable 20. But that's it. It doesn't collect the X-Factor issues where Legion actually wakes up from his coma. Now, it does get into the Age of Apocalypse. So, Age of Apocalypse, it collects X-Men Alpha, Amazing X-Men 1 through 4, Astonishing X-Men 1 through 4, X-Factor 1 through 4, Gambit and the Externals 1 through 4, Generation Next 1 through 4, Weapon X 1 through 4, Excalibur 1 through 4, Excalibur 1 through 4, whatever. X-Man 1 through 4, X-Men Omega, Age of Apocalypse The Chosen, and then the X-Men Ashcan number 2. So if you're not familiar with this story of this huge crossover, it's pretty much Legion goes back in time to try to kill Magneto because he thinks Magneto has been a burden on his dad's side for far too long, which is a good idea in theory. And then X-Men follow him, like Cable and Storm and Bishop. However, he does not succeed in killing Magneto. He accidentally, spoilers, sorry, but I have to mention spoilers even though this story is 20 years old, kills his dad, which changes the future for us. So it's an alternate reality where Apocalypse now rules the world and mutants are pretty much the top of the food chain and humans are the bottom. And some of the familiar faces we see here are either evil or they're good. Everything is different. Magneto now leads the X-Men, which were originally supposed to be just called the Mutants. I thought that was a really cool idea, but for some reason the editorial mandate said, no, we got to call them X-Men. They cannot be mutants, because I think that's what Stan Lee wanted to originally call the comic book. So yeah, we see a lot of familiar faces, and they act and are portrayed a lot different than what we're used to. And some of these faces, 4 of these characters, end up crossing over into the 616 universe. So, let's see here. Let's look at the compendium. Not a compendium, a companion. Sorry. I know this doesn't have any Uncanny X-Men or X-Man stories, but it is a companion to the X-Men Age of Apocalypse. And some of the stories here kind of lead up to the Age of Apocalypse. They just were not collected in the original run, such as these 2 books here, which is the X-Men Chronicles 1 through 2. It also collects Tales from the Age of Apocalypse 1 through 2, which were written long after the Age of Apocalypse crossover. X-Man -1 and 53 to 54, which is a story where he travels back to the Age of Apocalypse. X-Universe 1 through 2, Exile 60 through 61, a series that needs to be in omnibus format. It's a great series. X-Men Age of Apocalypse 1 through 6, which was the 10-year anniversary of the Age of Apocalypse. The one shot that kicked it off. A What If 77 and 81. What If X-Men Age of Apocalypse. Some material from the Hulk Broken World. X-Men Prime, which is the aftermath. X-Man Annual 96. X-Men Endangered Species. Exiles of Then and Now. And the House of M. Age of Apocalypse from 2005. So it's a lot of material that wasn't previously collected. A lot of this stuff was written long after the Age of Apocalypse. So yes, the people that crossed over were X-Man, which was a clone of Jean Grey and Cyclops. Not to be confused with Cable, who is the son of Madeline Pryor and Cyclops. Also Sugarman and Holocaust, which ended up changing his name because that's just a messed up name to have, I guess, for Marvel characters, to Nemesis and Dark Beast. Alright, the next big crossover, but the one also that kind of made me stop reading comic books for a while, because I think I just had crossover fatigue, or I had superhero fatigue by this point. But this is Onslaught, and this is X-Men Avengers Onslaught, because it's a huge crossover with all the Marvel characters. Back during the days of Will Spartasio, Jim Lee, they started this whole X-Trader thing, where Bishop from the future travels back in time to warn everybody that what he thought was Gambit was going to betray them. But as it turns out, Hell no, that's not the case. Mark Waid took over the book because Fabian Nicieza was out. And Scott Lobdell was running the titles now. He was kind of helming it, the whole storyline. So, turns out that Professor Xavier was Onslaught all along. When he turned off Magneto's mind during the Fatal Attraction storyline, he kind of merged with Magneto or something like that. I don't know. It's something ridiculous comic book science explanation that I'm sure 15-year-old me was like, yeah, not buying this. So anyway, this collects Cable 32 through 36, Uncanny X-Men 333 to 337, X-Force 55, then 57 through 58, X-Man 15 through 19, X-Men 53 to 57, and then Annual 96, X-Men Unlimited 11, Onslaught X-Men. Those are the big one-shots that started it off. And Onslaught Marvel Universe, which kind of ends the crossover, I guess. The epilogue, and then Avengers 401 through 402, Fantastic Four 415, Incredible Hulk 444 to 445, Wolverine 104 to 105. This omnibus is freaking huge. X Factor 125 to 126, Amazing Spider-Man 415, Green Goblin 12. Green Goblin, I forgot about that character. Not the Norman Osborn character, but the hero Green Goblin, who later comes back in Runaways. Spider-Man 72, Iron Man 332, Punisher 11, Thor 502, X-Men Road to Onslaught, and then some material from Excalibur 100, and Fantastic Four 416 is caught in here. So, for what they had to do, I guess this was a pretty neat idea. Marvel was losing money, so they ended up selling the rights or selling their characters to image creators, such as Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, people like that. It wasn't that they were out of ideas. I think it was just that it was a wise move on their part. The characters needed to be revamped, like Tony Stark was dead, so a teenage Tony was running around during this time because of The Crossing. I don't care what people say, I still enjoy that book. So yes, Avengers was relaunched under Rob Liefeld, so was Captain America, and Fantastic Four and Iron Man were launched under Jim Lee and Whilce Portacio. Jeff Loeb ended up taking over Captain America, and I cannot remember who ended up staying on Hulk. And that storyline called Heroes Reborn is coming out next year as an omnibus. We don't know what it collects yet. I'm assuming the 12 issues from the 4 series and then the 4-issue miniseries, Heroes Return to the Marvel Universe, where they came back. I seriously doubt that they'll collect issue 13 of that series because they had characters from Image show up from the Wildstorm universe and some of Rob Liefeld's characters, so...
Or it may contain that crappy Onslaught Reborn series, too.
There's that. So yes, this is Onslaught, and this was also the setup to Operation Zero Tolerance. See, they were also planning. They were planning that way ahead of time, and I think this is the issue that they were hinting at, that Professor Xavier made his first appearance as his evil self. They were showing you that they did their homework, and sure, whatever, I believe it. Professor X was always evil, or he was a perverted old dude that was trying to hit on young Jean. I don't know, but... it is what it is. I did think it was pretty interesting that Professor Xavier kept files on how he would kill each of his X-Men, though. That part was pretty wicked. There's the Ian Churchill cover, which is right there. And lots of extras in the back. Riding on the tails of Onslaught came Operation Zero Tolerance. So, this collects Generation X 26 through 31, X-Men 65 through 70, Uncanny X-Men 346, and Wolverine 115 through 118, Cable 45 through 47, and X-Man 30. So right off the bat, you can see there's a huge chunk of Uncanny X-Men missing, because we went from 337 all the way to 346. So there is material for a Onslaught Aftermath, and then also the Road to Onslaught too, because there's materials missing from there all the way to there. There are Road to Onslaught trade paperbacks, and there are trade paperbacks available of some of this stuff too. And together with the trade paperbacks, we actually have a comprehensive, complete list of Uncanny X-Men in collected editions format. So this is the story of Bastion and how, I guess I won't really spoil who he turns out to be, but Sentinels, Chris Bachalo on art, with Mark Buckingham doing most of the stuff too. Carlos Pacheco now under Uncanny X-Men. Lionel Yu drawing some Wolverine. I got some early Lionel Yu stuff. I think Roger Cruz on X-Man. So we still have some pretty good art. Roger Cruz is one of those guys that I never did dig. I don't think that guy could ever pick a style. But Carlos Pacheco, man, that was my dude. I love that guy's artwork. And Joe Madureira had some of the stuff, but for some reason they only collect one issue, and it was the one issue I don't think he even drew, which is 346. We need some Joe Mad material collected in oversized format. Come on, Marvel. And last but not least, I've already done an overview video of this, so check that out. But I will talk about what's in here, and then what I expect from the Eve of Destruction Omnibus, what I would love for them to collect. So this is the return of Chris Claremont to X-Men, like I've said before in my video. This collects X-Men, adjective list 100 through 109, annual 2000, I'm sorry, not number 2000, but the year 2000. Uncanny X-Men 381 to 389, X-Men Unlimited 27 through 29, the X-Men Black Sun miniseries 1 through 5, Bishop the Last X-Man 15 through 16, and Cable 87, which are part of the Dream's End crossover. Now, as I said earlier, there is an Eve of Destruction Omnibus coming out in July of next year. So really excited about that, because once that comes out, that should put us right up against Grant Morrison's new X-Men, which I will talk about in part 3 of these series. So, we know it's about 860 something pages. So what I would have, my dream book that I would have would be for Eve of Destruction to collect Uncanny X-Men 390 to 393, X-Men 110 to 113, Uncanny X-Men Annual 2000, X-Men Declassified 1, The Magneto Dark Seduction 1 through 4, X-Men The Search for Cyclops 1 through 4, which is the aftermath of the 12, X-Men Unlimited 30 to 31, X-Men Liberators miniseries, X-Men Forever miniseries, although I've been told that that doesn't fit in, that goes more up with Joe Casey's run. I'm not sure why. That was written by Fabian Nicieza. But definitely the follow-up to the Black Sun, so Black Sun Magic 1 through 4, and then the Gambit and Bishop miniseries 1 through 6 with the Alpha and Omega issues. That would be my dream book, and that would line this up perfectly with New X-Men, which I like to call the New Age of X-Men, and that is around 2001. So yes, this takes us from 92 to 2001. So about 9 years. I mean, that's a lot of books really in this format to be collected, considering some of the earlier stuff by Marvel hasn't been collected in this format. So that's it.
And out of all these books for a new reader, I would definitely recommend X-Men The Age of Apocalypse, because all the other books are part of an ongoing story. Age of Apocalypse is just something anybody can pick up, and you don't need much explanation.
And that is it. That is part 2. There's a part 3 coming out, and that will probably come out next week sometime or the week after that. So I promise not to take a couple of months in between. And this is everything from 1992 all the way to 2001, just about. Don't forget that we have another omnibus coming up, the Eve of Destruction. So very excited about that, to make a nice little bookend to this whole era of X-Men. If this is your first time watching the video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you liked what you saw. And don't forget to hit the like button. If you would like to see more comprehensive reading orders, please let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what I left out or what you would love to see. Am I calling it right when I say that the next omnibus after Eve of Destruction during this era will be Apocalypse of 12? Let me know. Again, this was Omar. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.